Over to you, Toastmaster Sridevi.
Thank you, Toastmaster Anjali. Good evening, Toastmasters and my dear guests. Today, I'll be attempting a project from the Entertaining Speakers Manual, and I'll be narrating a story. And let me give you a brief introduction to what I'll be talking about. The setup is maybe early in the 90s, and it's in London in a place called the Hyde Park. There is a gloomy old man called as Norman Godspeed sitting in a park bench, observing people passing by and analyzing them. And he has a particular encounter with a youngster, and let's see what happens next. Norman Godspeed sat on a bench in a park with his back to a strip of bush-planted lawn fenced by the park railing, and the rows front of him covered with vehicles. It was 30 minutes past 6 on an early March evening, and the dusk had fallen heavily over the scene. Dusk mitigated by some faint moonlight and many street lamps. There was wide emptiness over the road and sidewalk, and yet there were many unconsidered figures moving silently through the half-light or sitting unobtrusively on benches and chairs, scarcely to be distinguished from the shadowed gloom in which they sat. This scene pleased Mr. Godspeed as it harmonized with his present mood. Dusk, to his mind, was the hour of defeated men and women who had fought and lost, who hid their fallen fortunes and dead hopes as far as possible from the scrutiny of the curious, came forth in this hour of gloom, where their shabby clothes, bowed shoulders, unhappy eyes might pass unnoticed, at any rate unrecognized. Mr. Godspeed's imagination pictured these things as he sat on the bench in the almost deserted walk. He was in the mood to count himself amongst the defeated. Money troubles did not press on him. Had he so wished, he could have strolled in the roads of the light and noise and take place in the jolting rank of those who enjoyed prosperity or struggled for it. He had been heartbroken and cynical in the moment, not disinclined to take a certain cynical pleasure in observing and labeling the fellow wanderers as they went their ways in the dark stretches between the lamp lights. On a bench by his side sat an elderly gentleman with a dropping air of defiance that was probably the remaining trace of self-respect in an individual who had ceased to defy successfully anybody or anything. His clothes could be scarcely called shabby. He belonged unmistakably to the forlorn orchestra whose piping no one dances, and he was one of the world's lamenters who induced no responsive weeping. He slowly got up, and retreated figure vanished slowly in the shadow, and in his place on the bench was almost taken over by a young man, fairly well dressed, but scarcely more cheerful of appearance than the previous man. As if to emphasize the fact that the world was badly treating him, he unburdened himself and let out a few curse words as he flung himself on the seat. "You don't seem to have a good temper," said Godspeed, judging that he was expected to take due notice of the demonstration. The young man turned to him with a look of disarming frankness. "You wouldn't be in a good temper if you were in the same fix as I am in," he said. "I've done the silliest thing I've ever done in my life." "Oh," said Godspeed dispassionately. "So I came up this afternoon, meaning to stay in Paradise Hotel in Berkshire Square, and when I got there, I found out that it had already been pulled down and there's a cinema theater there right now. Finally, the taxi driver recommended me another hotel a way off, and I quickly went there and quickly sent a letter to my people, giving them the address of this new place. And then I went out to buy some soap. I forgot to pack any soap, and I hate using the hotel soap. I strolled about a bit, drank a beer, looked for the shops, and I turned my steps back to go back to the hotel, and suddenly realized that I don't remember the name of the hotel or the street that it's located in. Now that's a nice mess for a person who does not have any friends or family in London. Of course, I can wire the people that I've messaged my address to, but they wouldn't have gotten my letter until tomorrow. Meantime, I have no money, and the little that I had, I already spent on the drinks and the soap. I have nowhere to go for the night. The eloquent speech had a pause, and I suppose you think that I spun a rather impossible story for you to believe, I guess, said the young man, suggesting resentment in his voice. Not at all impossible, said Godspeed judiciously. I remember doing the exact same thing a few months back in a foreign capital. But luckily, I remembered that the hotel was on a sort of a canal, and it struck that if we found the canal, we would be able to trace back the hotel, and so we did. The young man looked and said, in a foreign country, I wouldn't mind it so much. One could go to the council and get the requisite help from him. But here in one's own land, it's far more neglected, and one cannot find the way so easily. Unless I can find some decent chap to swallow my story and lend me some money. Otherwise, it's going to be ending up spending the night on the footpath. I'm glad anyhow that you don't think my story is obnoxiously improbable. He threw a good deal of warmth in the last remark, as though perhaps to indicate his hope that Godspeed did not question his credibility. Of course, Godspeed said slowly, but the weak point in your story is that you can't produce the soap. The young man sat forward hurriedly, felt rapidly in his pockets. Oh, I must have lost it. Godspeed looks at him and says, to lose a hotel and a cake of soap in one night suggests willful carelessness. And the young man scarcely waited to hear the ending remark. He fitted away down the park and headed with the head held high with some jaded jauntiness. Godspeed spoke to himself. What a pity. Going out to get one's own soap was the very convincing point in his whole story. And yet, it's just that little detail that brought him to grief. If he had brilliantly forethought this and provided himself with a cake of soap wrapped and sealed with the solitude of the chemist's counter, he would have been a genius of a particular line. With that reflection, Godspeed rose to go. As he did so, an exclamation of concern escaped him. Lying on the ground by the side of the bench, there was a small oval packet wrapped and sealed with the solitude of the chemist's counter. It could be nothing else but a cake of soap, and it had evidently fallen out of the young man's coat when he flung himself and sat down. In another moment, Godspeed realized what he had done, and he started running in the dusk-shrouded path, anxiously in quest to find the youth. And he suddenly observed him standing right around the corner and waved at him. Hey, the important witness to the genuineness of your story has turned up, said Godspeed, holding out the cake of soap. It must have slid out of your overcoat pocket when you sat down. I saw it on the ground after you left. Please excuse my disbelief and accept the sovereign loan from me. The young man hastily removed all the doubt on the subject by pocketing the coin. Here's my card and my address, continued Godspeed. Any day this week would do for you to return the money. And here is the soap. Don't lose it. It's been a good friend to you. Lucky thing you found it, said the young, and then took the money, the soap, and disappeared. Poor boy, said Godspeed to himself. It's a lesson to me not to be clever in judging circumstances. As Godspeed retraced his steps past the seat where the little drama had taken place, he saw the elderly gentleman peering beneath, looking all sides, and recognized it was a fellow elderly companion that he had before. Have you lost anything, sir? He asks. And the old man looks at him and says, Yes, sir, a cake of soap. My dear ladies and gentlemen, it is up to you to decide whether the old man was tricking Mr. Godspeed or did the young man get away with his trick. Thank you, and back to you.